Here, John Lowery Sr., Jefferson High, 2023 ABCA Hall of Fame inductee, but heading into 52nd season as head coach, 1,392 wins, 12 state championships, 26 state appearances. And Max Preps also named you greatest coach in West Virginia history of any sport, which is unreal. So, John, thanks for jumping on with me.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I look forward to talking with you.
Which son was the best baseball player?
Well, I guess they all had their uh, strengths and abilities. They all had the opportunity to play beyond high school. John played, out at Minnesota and did well, and had the opportunity to play beyond that, a year professionally. So I guess if you looked at it that, maybe his skill set was conducive to getting that opportunity. But my middle son, uh, Charlie, he was an all conference catcher at Shepherd, which is a Division II school here in our area, and my youngest son had the opportunity to play at James Madison, where he was captain of the team down there his senior year. So all three of them had opportunities to play collegiate level and played different positions. Uh, John was a left-handed thrower, so he was able to pitch and play first. Charlie was all right-handed. Of course, he got behind the plate. And, Rusty was a second baseman, but he thing that I think really helped his game was the fact that he could switch hit, and he hit from both sides fairly well. And um, so they all had enjoyable careers and played high school for us, and it was just a lot of good memories.
All three of them still involved in baseball?
Um, in a way, John, I would say is probably he coached at our rival high school, Martinsburg, for 7 years. Then he went up to Mercersburg Academy and coached when his oldest son, Bo, who went on to play for the Mountaineers at West Virginia, was playing there at Mercersburg. Uh, Rusty's an athletic director at Woodgrove High School, so he's involved in athletics. Obviously baseball will be included in that, but he's overall with the athletic. My, my my middle son Charlie, the one who was the catcher, he's a banker, so he goes to games and so forth, but he's not actively involved.
How did John Jr. get all the way out to Minnesota? I mean, that was in an era that maybe kids didn't travel as far to go to school.
Well, that's an interesting story. Back then, they used to put some of the college games on TV, uh, and I watched Minnesota play on TV one night, and what caught my interest about that was Denny Nagel played for uh, Minnesota, and he was from Arundel, which was had proximity to where we are. We're maybe that's 60 or 70 miles, but I knew Arundel's coach Bernie Walters and so forth. And well, in 1987, when John was a junior, I had the opportunity to work at the Olympic Festival
Yep.
in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And down the left field line, I saw a guy with an M on his hat, like the Minnesota M, and being a father, I guess, as well as a coach. I went down. It was Rob Fornacier. He was the
Oh yeah.
assistant coach at Minnesota at the time, and I said, Coach, I said I have a son who's a left-handed pitcher. I think he has the ability to play at the Division I level. Of course, Rob was polite, nodded his head because I'm sure he heard that a lot. And I said, and if you don't believe me, I said you can, ask, talk to Bernie Walters because John had played, some travel fall or whatever it was back then, games with Bernie. Well, when I said Bernie Walters' name, you could kind of see a light go on a little bit, and so that kind of started to get the ball rolling. Well, John Anderson, their head coach, came down to Baltimore when they were playing they had an all-star game down there, and John got the pitch, and he was a junior, and I think he threw 84, 85 that day, and they asked him out for a visit, and when we went out for the visit, it was when the Twins were in the World Series, so we combined the visit with I knew a scout friend of mine who could get us tickets, so we went to the World Series game. I think it was his 18th birthday. We went to the World Series game, and then he had a good visit, and the people out there were just super, and he became they sold him on the program. A lot of people say Minnesota, up there in the weather, but they were playing at the Dome at the time,
Yep.
and then they during the
Siebert.
early part of the season, they'd fly to Arizona or to Texas or whatever on weekends to play. So, uh, they had a venue to be able to work out. They had an indoor facility, and then they played their games in the dome, and they traveled. And it's a Big Ten program. And it just was a good fit for him, and he had a great career out there, great experience, and he met a lot of people. I think that served him well. Um, as his life moved on beyond college.
That was my coldest recruiting trip of all time. That's back. They changed the recruiting calendar, so you couldn't go out till March 1st that year. So I was at Iowa at the time. I drove to the Metrodome because they were going to play. They played junior college games all night. So we had an incoming player from Kirkwood. So Kirkwood started a doubleheader at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well,
And
well,
it was negative 40 wind chill degree. I didn't think my car was going to start when I came out of the Metrodome. It was light. I went in, it was pitch black, and when I came out at 7:30 in the morning, it was light out, but it was negative 40 wind chills. So it was got
well,
back home.
I'd heard that teams that play out, high school teams, I'd heard
Yep.
if they wanted to play there, they'd have
Yeah.
to play like
Yeah, they played around
Lowery
the clock. It was awesome. So there would be, JUCO games going on. There'd be Division III, NAIA, Division II. There was just everybody could rent it out. So they just would get games in as much as they could. It was awesome. How did you handle their baseball growing up? We have a lot of parents that listen in. I mean, were you extremely involved with their baseball growing up? Were you hands off? How'd you handle their baseball growing up?
No, I mean, I let them enjoy the game for what it was. They traveled with me a lot. Like I mentioned, before we got on the air, I'd been with the Winchester Royals in the Valley League, and they were 10, 11, 12, little league age then. And they would go to the games with me. And fortunately enough, they were of they even at that age they could stand in the outfield and shag balls, and they were around guys who, one of them in particular, Jimmy Key, who pitched in the big leagues. He was on the team, and they got to be around those guys and talk to those guys from Clemson, Georgia Southern, Division One schools, and I just think being around those type of people, creates a mindset. They always had an interest in it. They follow our high school team, and but I never was actively involved in any of their with their youth teams or anything. I'd go watch, and we play in the backyard, and uh, and have fun that way. But that's pretty much the way it is. And I think I'm very fortunate that all three of them seemed to, gravitate to the game and liked it. And it wasn't anything where you had to, and I think that's the best way. People tend to do best when they're motivated because of their interest level. Uh, and I think that was the case with them. And I don't think it works very well the other way.
So did they play organized baseball when you were with Winchester?
They played little league ball.
In Winchester?
Well, no, they played back in our county. We live about 30 miles from Winchester.
Okay. I didn't realize you guys were that close.
Yeah.
Yeah, that until you get out to that part of the world, you don't realize how close West Virginia is to everything over on that side. So that's cool. So they got to stay at home because my dad coached the Galesburg Pioneers from 1974 to 1979, and we actually lived in Galesburg. I stayed in a hotel when I was a little kid, and then we actually lived with the players one year, which, I mean, that would never happen now, but my family actually lived in a college house with the players when I was growing up in the summer.
Well, yeah, where we live, we're in a panhandle.
Yep.
Harper's Ferry is the town that most people recognize because of the John Brown raid. We're 60 miles from Washington, 70 miles from Baltimore. When John was a junior in high school, he went to the Baltimore area and played in the summer league, and he was playing against college kids at that time. And but that proximity, it's kind of you're close to an urban area, and we're kind of rural, and it's just a good place to live.
Yeah.
Lived there all my life.
Do wives or moms get enough credit for the process of kids' development on that side?
Well, I know in my particular case, I would say no, but wives, they are so important because of the support they give and the willingness to be able to make the sacrifices that they have to make to accommodate all the things that go in, to being involved in ball. The summer I was at the Olympic Festival. They were three of them were playing all on different teams, all going in different directions, and she had to help coordinate that with a ride for this one, a ride for that one. And she's always let me pursue the things that interest me. From a baseball, not only did I coach baseball, but I was the head basketball coach at our school for 11 years, and I was an assistant football coach for 17 years. So, being from an athletic family yourself, you can understand the demands on time that makes. And if you don't have a wife that buys in and supports and is willing, and it can make it very difficult. And I've been fortunate every step of the way to have a wife that has been that way.
With coaching college summer baseball, did you ever think about moving to the college side?
Well, I really didn't. I enjoyed, like I said, I grew up in this area, and I had the good fortune at the high school that I coach at. It was a consolidation of within our county, and I had a chance to be the coach at that school from its inception in an area where I grew up. And in West Virginia, the number of games we get to play and the travel and all the things that we've done, I just enjoyed the high school level, and I never really thought beyond that. And to be truthful, I never really had any opportunities beyond that other than in the Valley League. So, I had a good home base, and I was very satisfied with what I do. And, as I said, not only coaching baseball, which I've done for the length of time that I've done it, but in my younger days, I just love coaching. I was involved in all the sports. So.
Did you guys go across? So did you guys go to Maryland and play high school games, or did you go to Virginia and play high school games?
We did. We've, in fact, as time went on, we got to where we travel. We take overnight trips, and we've gone to Cooperstown to play. We go to Myrtle Beach. We're down there at spring break to play. So, back before 1984, you could play as many games as you wanted to. Yep. And I remember one year we played 45 games. Now when you start playing,
that's unheard of for high school.
That's
unheard of for high school.
Yeah, and
we played a lot in Indiana. We could play 28 regular season games in Indiana, so we did play a lot of games.
Well, now they in 1984 they put it back to where you could play 30 games plus a tournament.
Yep.
Well, some of the teams they organized like a weekend tournament, like it was a round robin tournament to win all year. So they'd end up playing, way up there too. So then they modified it again. We can play 32 games. And if you want to play in a tournament, that's included within that 32 games. You play 32 games, you get to scrimmage twice before the season starts. So that's 34. And if you're fortunate enough to progress and go through your tournament, it's double elimination at the sectional level. It's 2 out of 3 at the regional level, still single elimination at our state level, but you can play close to 40 games. And, in that time period, that's a fourth of a big league season if you think about it in those terms. And so I'm fortunate that we get to play the number of games. Baseball is a game that needs to be played. That as well as I do. And I think that's the reason you see in the big league they play every day. Not trying to compare the big leagues to high school, but it is a game. If you're going to get better, you got to repetition is so important, and all the situations that come up within the game and the different things. To learn to play the game, you got to play the game. And I think we're fortunate in West Virginia that we're allowed to play the number of games we do because, that helps in that development.
When you get to the state, how many teams end up making it to state with a single elimination round?
Four.
So it's 4. So
right.
It's 2. Is it a doubleheader that day?
What they do is they bring all 3 classes in. There's 3 classes. So they have on a Thursday night, they'll have 2 semifinal games. Yep. Then on Friday, they have the other semifinals for the other 2 classes. Then on Saturday, they'll have the 3 championship games.
That's how the Iowa tournament is, except it's single elimination all the way through, but because everybody gets in with the 4 classes. But they kind of went back to split with COVID. They kind of had to split it again, but it used to be in Des Moines at the AAA stadium, and it was great because there would be 32 teams that would show up and play. And the 1As and 2As would start early, and then the 3As and 4As would start later. But it was a great tournament because you got a chance to watch 32 teams go at it, which is awesome.
Yeah, we've tried as a coaches association to get them to make the state tournament in double elimination, but I think the problem there is, they rent the minor league stadium, what used to be a minor league stadium, the Appalachian Pal Park down in Charleston, and if you get rain, then you get backed up. Then you have to have then you get the losers brackets game. Then you almost have to have another field that you could do. And I guess it's just a complexity of detail there that would have to be worked out. When you're playing locally and you have the double elimination format, if you have to double up and play 2 games in one day, there's a little more flexibility that way to make it work. And but when they compact the state tournament into that 3-day period, you can see how rain could really complicate the issue.
What was your first job?
In baseball?
No,
coaching?
First job ever.
Well, my first job ever, I was a bag groceries at White Supermarket in Charlestown, West Virginia.
What age did you start?
In the 9th grade through the 12th
we talk about
grade.
in the office all the time how all of us had jobs early. You don't see it as much anymore, but we all had jobs early.
I can remember when I came home, I told my father I was going to be making 75 cents an hour. He says, he's not going to be paying you that much, he said. But that's what we made, was 75 cents an hour. And one time I put I'll never forget this, $18.89 worth of groceries in the wrong car. And the boss told me I could keep my job, but I'd have to pay for the groceries.
Oh, no.
And it took me 2 weekends. I remember going home and really being upset and Dad, I said, that man has more money than he's going to make me pay for those groceries. And my father said, he said, John, let me ask you a question. He said, did you put the groceries in the wrong car? And I said, yes, sir, I did. He said, well, then it's up to you to pay for it. And, that was a good lesson and responsibility to learn. And hard lesson, but that's the realities that you face in life sometimes. Everything doesn't just go the way you want it to go.
Yeah. And you said you always knew you wanted to get into coaching?
I did, even as a kid growing up, back then, the proximity of the elementary school to the high school, on the way home, I'd go over, I'd sit in the gym, and, I appreciate those coaches. They probably could have run me out, but they used to have an American Legion team, an older American Legion team, adults, where they bring guys in and they play all these Army-based teams, military teams. And, there'd be some guys that were playing in the big leagues that were in the military to come through and play those Sunday games. And I'd always like going to those, and just something about being involved with the game. When I got through playing, I wanted to stay involved with it, and coaching was the way. And that's what I wanted to do. And been fortunate to have the opportunity to have done it. So,
is it easier to coach kids now than when you first started?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think there's always different challenges. I think now you mentioned the travel teams and all that, and the social media and all those things that go along with it. It makes it more interesting. The kids are. It used to be, the high school team would have been the focal point, and I'm not saying it's not the focal point in a degree, but there's also a lot of other interests going on, and then the kids sometimes get sidetracked with the idea of this college is interested in me, this college, and they get caught up in that, and they forget what they got to do to keep that college interested in them, so to speak. And I read a book recently by Augie Garito, and the title of it is "Life Is Yours to Win."
It's a great book.
And in there, he has about prospect versus player. And a lot of these guys look at themselves as being prospects, but they got to learn to be players first, and the other take care of itself. And I think that's some of the challenges that we face now. But kids have always been kids. They're gonna test you, and I think that's one advantage of having coached in the same school for as long as you have. While you still, there are those that are gonna, as I mentioned, test you. But I think people know how you're going to be. If you've established that over the years, what your philosophy is, what your standards are, how things are going to be done, and that's not saying that you don't try to improve how you go about doing things, but I think we have a level of, as you mentioned earlier about players being consistent, I think coaches have to be consistent too, and how they handle situations and how they handle their players.
Have your standards changed much over the years?
Uh, I think probably I try to be a little more tolerant. I think at times, if I reflect back on my younger years, volatile, maybe that might be a word. Sometimes I'd get, I'd temper my, the emotion of the game. I think I can control those things better than I used to. Uh, you know, they talk about old school, new school, that type of thing. Growing up, I played for coaches. They were kind of, in your face type of guys. If you didn't get things done, they challenged you. I mean, there wasn't any. I can remember running sprints one time in football, and they blow the whistle, and you'd have to do a forward roll and get up and keep going. Well, I was a sophomore, and I was still not real agile, coordinated, or whatever you want to say. And coming out of that forward roll, I wasn't coming out of it the way he wanted it, and he'd help me up by giving me a boost with a foot in the fanny to get me up. Those kind of things wouldn't fly now, but those are the kind of things that you grew up with.
He was just trying to help.
Yeah, sure. He was just trying to, hey, Flower, you got to go a little faster here, So, but you learn to adjust and temper those things. I think today's society, you just you know some of the things that maybe happened earlier, and you learn from. And I've been fortunate, the people who are, the administrators, the people that were in charge, they helped me along. They helped me in my development, and I appreciate that. And but I do think I'm a little more patient, and I realize, you see things that have happened over and over again, and you just realize that it's just those are things you're going to have to handle, and how you handle them, it will determine, I think, the success you might be able to have.
Well, keeping somebody accountable is a form of love, isn't it?
I think so. And I think, I tell them, ultimately the world's going to discipline you.
Yes.
So if you don't discipline yourself.
Yes.
So if the little lessons or the things that they might, let's say you come late to a practice, maybe you don't start the next game. Those are easy. They don't like it at the time, but that's a very minuscule thing if it can help teach a lesson rather than them having to learn something like that later in life when the stakes are so much higher for them. And but those are concepts that I think that you're trying to get across to kids, and maybe some understand them, maybe some of the parents don't understand that, but I think later on they do have an appreciation for that, because they're going to see things crop up in their life that are going to require them to have to make the right decision.
Yeah.
And if not, they're going to be accountable for the decision they do make. So,
do you do many parent meetings?
We have a boosters club, which is open to our parents to come. We have a parents meeting at the beginning of the year. We have what we call a uniform distribution day, where all of our spirit items and all the stuff that the kids get, or have the opportunity to get beyond their uniforms and so forth. We do that. We have Team Snap and Game Changer and all that type of stuff that we keep information flowing back and forth. And again, as we've talked about my abilities with technology, I have people that have that have been in the program for a number of years that help me with that. Boosters Club officers. We'll have people that stay involved in our program even after their youngsters have finished playing, in support roles, and we certainly appreciate that.
What type of fundraisers are you guys doing with your booster club?
Well, we're allowed to have 4 a year, and we sell signs for our outfield fence. We have a hog roast.
What do you charge for your outfield fences? Your signs?
I think it's $250 for the sign. The first year, they maybe, because you got to have the sign made, and I think it's $200 a sign. It makes over $5,000 for us when we do that.
What do you make off the hog roast? It's a great
Hog
idea,
roast,
by the way. That's a lot of meat. There's a lot of meat on hog roast. I've been to some friends' hog roast. There's a ton of meat.
we'll make $3,500 to $4,000. Uh, but our big one's the basket bingo. We have a basket bingo, and we'll make uh, more than $15,000 on that.
Is that a
I think.
one-day event?
Right. And we have people that sell, that go out and get the prizes that the people can win and all the other. And then we also do the tip jar thing, the basket bingo that goes on. And so that's a nice fundraiser. And of course, we have our concession stand, which we do, and we sell 50/50 tickets at the games, and uh, you know things like that. And we'll have people that'll make donations to us. My former coach, my high school football coach, uh, he, he's passed away now. He follows us around, and he like when we go to Myrtle Beach, he'd walk down to the fence after the games and he'd shake my hand. He'd say, "Now, John," he said, "good luck down there at the beach." And he'd have two $100 bills in his hand. He said, "Now, if any of those boys need anything while they're down there, or somebody's having that piece, that you make sure that." So we get people that support us like that, and we've been fortunate over the years in that regard to have people interested and good support. We have an indoor hitting building called the Row Truck Building that was named after a player that uh, played for us in 2008, his freshman year in college. He had the misfortune of being killed in a car wreck in the community. Everything that was donated in his memory went to establishing that building. And it's not a huge building, but it's big enough to have lockers all the way down one side. We have hitting cage on the other side. We got a big flat screen TV in the end of it, and people donated so that we were able to have that. It's heated, have air conditioning in it in the summer, and so it's been very fortunate in a lot of regards, no question.
How early can you have your hands on them in the spring before the
Well,
season
we have
starts?
now what is called flex days in our state, which are 12 days out before you start the season that you can practice with your guys. And it has to be open to anybody. You just can't say this is a specific. Anybody who wants to come can come. But it's oriented toward baseball, and we'll start that mid-January, 2 days a week. And about a week and a half ago, we started our conditioning program, which goes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It has an agility component plus a weight room where when we have two guys from a outside organization who job are working with athletes, they come in and they do that. Our boosters club supports the cost of that, plus the players play part of the cost of that too. And we do that in our high school weight room and in open areas around our school. You got to share the gym with other teams at this time of year. So we might use the hallway, or if it's nice, we might go outside. Our football field is turfed, and to do that. So, while we can't be baseball oriented with them, we do have contact with them at that during that time. We have a fall team, which a couple of our, one of my former players ran this year. It's not associated with the high school team at all. The high school, the coaches can't have anything to do with it other than we go watch the games. But, the young man that runs it for us, having been a former player, he knows pretty much how we go about doing things. So that helps too. It helps create the interest for those who are not involved in fall sports. And I make it clear too. We have guys that play basketball, we have guys that play football, and I think that's great. And you've heard coaches yourself talk. They like to recruit athletes that have played three sports because of the discipline involved in all the three sports.
Keeps them healthier too. That's a big
teammate.
one. Keeps them healthier.
Right. And so, if the kids do that, that's great. But the ones that don't do that, we have these other things available for them.
Do you feel like the training piece is probably what's changed the most over the years, is how kids are training in the off season for baseball?
Well, I think it's more of a specificity. Is that how you say the word?
Yes.
Toward the sport, they try to do things. They see that maybe they're they're better in that sport, or their opportunity might become in that sport. They have personal trainers, or they'll take lessons, pitching lessons, hitting lessons. Uh, yeah, I think that's become more uh, popular, more kids get involved in that more now.
How long did it take you to win your first state championship?
We won it in 1979. I started coaching. Well, I coached 2 years at Harpers Ferry High School, which was a small Class A school, and that was one of the three schools that consolidated to form Jefferson. We got to the tournament in our first year, '73. Uh, Joey Patina, does that name ring a bell? I don't know if that rings. Mm-hmm. I think I'm saying it right. He played shortstop for one of the teams that was in the tournament. Now he went on to play in the big leagues, and he was a bench coach for Tony La Russa for a while. So that's the name I remember from that. But we went there in '77, '78, and finally in '79. And I got a story I think you might enjoy. In '78, it upset me at the time. It kind of made me mad at the time. But as I reflect on it, it was so true, and it's that accountability issue that you were talking about. The scout said, "Coach, how'd your team do last year?" I said, "Well, we did well." I said, "We'd have played we'd have been in the state championship game, but we let a guy go from first to third on us on a bunt, and we bobbled a ground ball and tied the game up. We got beat in extra innings." He said, "We know, Coach, teams that play for the state championship don't let guys go first to third on the bunt on." And back then I think, well, if this hadn't happened, we'd have got. But when those things happen, that's baseball. So
yeah, but it's easy to say that from the outside of the fence. I say, yeah. I love this quote: "Every job's easy if you're not the one doing it."
That's right. Hindsight is 20/20, yes, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's right.
We weren't trying to let them go first to third. Like I guarantee that we were not trying to let them go first to third.
But I think I try to point it to the kids. Say, guys, if we want to play for the championship now, we got to be able to get that bunt down. We got to be able to do it. So it was a good lesson. But we won it in '79, and then we didn't win it again until '88. And John was the pitcher, and my son Charlie was the catcher. And that's the only time that's happened. And that was certainly a personal highlight. All the championships are highlights, but I'm human. You have things that you look back on. And I was fortunate enough that my youngest son, we in the early '90s, we won at '91, '92, '93, and he was on two of those three teams that were able to do that. So
I'll tell you what, that's a common theme. I've done a lot of father and son episodes, and it seems like that time when the son played for the dad, it was one of the best winning percentage and championships that coach has had in their career.
I had a snafu probably with each one of them at one time. We were playing out in the Northern Panhandle when my youngest son Rusty was a senior, and they were playing. Minnesota was playing Ohio State Columbus. So the deal was, it was kind of playing that way. We played there, and then after the Saturday game, we were going to travel out to Columbus to watch John play on Sunday. So I don't know, something happened during the game, and I got upset with my son. And after the game, he wasn't going to go with us. He's going to go back. Well, we.
There were a lot of times in college playing for my dad and brother where I wish I didn't have to ride with them.
Yeah. So he ends up going, but when we get to Columbus, we have to get 2 motel rooms. So those are good memories and reflection. And
is Nick Swisher the best baseball player to come out of West Virginia?
Well, John Kruk came out of there.
Yep.
Lou Burdett. I don't know if that's a name that dates back to the late with the Braves.
I forget John Kruk was from West Virginia.
Yeah. We played against him. In fact, he pitched against us, and his father was umpiring. His name's Kruk. Kruk. I said, "What am I getting myself into here?" I said, "His father's umpiring, the son's pitching. Their name's Kruk, but his father was one of the best umpires we ever had. What a super guy!" And John Kruk in his younger days too was a good basketball player.
Yeah,
but he.
You couldn't tell from that, but he was a great athlete. Coming out of high school.
And Jed Jerko, he's another one from West Virginia. He's a good player. There've been some
Jerko, man. Good story here. Where the year they changed the bats to BB Core, that year was a mess because they rolled out the stipulations so late that a lot of schools didn't get bats. So at Iowa, we didn't get our BB Corps bats until the season started. So the first time we were able to take BP with those BB Corps bats was our first game against West Virginia, and our hitters didn't look good, but he looked fine. He looked like he was using the old bats.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, and I don't know if you realize, talking about player, George Brett was born in West Virginia, Glendale, West Virginia, even though he didn't grow up in West Virginia. And Mazeroski, he was born in Wheeling, West Virginia. So there's been, we've been fortunate to have some guys through the years that have been in the Panhandle here. We had 3 guys from our rival school. Buddy Barker played in the 50s. Paul Creek, who was contemporary with John, he was a year younger. And a kid named Scotty Bullitt, who played. So, there's, looking back and around, but, say who the best was, Swisher was a good one, but I think Kruk had a lifetime batting average of 300. So he had a successful career too.
He could hit. He could really hit. Yeah. Really good feel for hitting. Great hands. Great hands.
The story goes, I heard that when he was growing up, he played in the backyard and the family had a garden in left field. Or excuse me, the family had a garden in right field. I'm sorry, had a garden in right field. He being a left-handed hitter, if he hit the ball in the garden, his father would give him a whack on the rear end. So he learned to hit it the other way, and it's paid off for him because he can spray the ball around well. So.
A little negative feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, what are some of the things that you've changed over the years with your team, practice-wise, or individual drills? Anything you've changed over the years?
Well, we do our drill work early in practice. Our breakdown stuff. We'll go out and stretch, run, throw. Then we'll try to do, I'll try to keep everybody involved. I think that's one thing. It used to be we do things where you'd have some guys standing around. Well, now I try to design practice to where we have everybody involved. Like when we hit to the outfield, and if we throw the bases, I'll have 3 guys fun going. And, want to be throwing to third, want to be throwing to second, want to be throwing to the plate, and we'll switch it around. Then we have multiple hitters with our infield. We might do a 5-3, 6-4, 4-6, 6-3, 5-4, to switch it up that way, so that everybody keeps involved. While we're doing that, then we'll have somebody working during our outfield, working on a specific drop steps one way, drop steps the other way. We do our fly ball priority drill. If we're doing it to the left side of the infield, we'll be doing ground balls to the right side instead of just standing there and watching. So I try to keep everybody involved. Another thing I try to do every game, every day, for about 45 minutes to an hour, is to play a game, whether it's a coach pitch game or using a machine game. And I'll.
Are you still throwing? You still throw?
No.
When's the last year for you that you threw?
Oh, it's been a while back. I'd hurt my arm when I was younger, and I've always been fortunate to have young guys that and that's important too. You don't realize how important that is to have somebody that can do that.
Yes,
but
it's a skill. The ones that are good at it, it's a great skill. I was just okay at throwing, really good at fungo, but that skill is tremendous for the guys that are good.
Yeah, I can hit fungos, and I can still do that. But I try to track the at bats, how many bats they get, and I can tell them. Not only over the course of the season if they get maybe 100, 125 at bats. But in practice, you've gotten 200 bats. Yep. So now you've got 300 bats. So
you handwriting with that when you're tracking ABs?
I do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you the one? You're the one tracking
in practice, I do.
Yep.
In games, we have the game changer thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Everything going.
Hey, when you're doing fly ball communication, are you fungoing that, or are you using machine for that?
Use a machine.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's the most realistic.
You can place balls a lot better.
Yes.
With that.
Yep. So, what type of machine are you guys using?
We have the jugs, what's the small one called?
Yeah, I know that them and Hack Attack, they have the smaller ones.
Hack Attack, that's what we got. Yeah. We got. We have 2 machines. The Hack Attack and the bigger one with the wheels. I don't think it's a joke. I can't keep all that straight in my mind anymore either. So But
You got any tips for
those are
catching? You
godsend
got any
for us.
tips for pops up, catching pop ups and fly balls?
Well, don't call them too early.
Yeah,
A lot of guys will
on the way
call
down.
yeah, right. Make sure that the ball's at the peak of its flight before you would call it. And you got to have confidence in the voice of the other guy. Once your priority's set. I mean, I tell the outfielders, I don't want you calling a ball that you got to make a great catch on. It's a routine catch for the shortstop, maybe stand underneath of it. And you got to run a long way to get to it. But I also want that when they hear an outfielder call it, that the infielder peels off so that they have confidence that that the collision's not going to occur.
Yeah, the outfielders, we wanted them to look at the infielder's number. If they could see the infielder's numbers, he's probably camped. If you were seeing his chest, it was probably going to be a tough play for the infielders. And then we always said the outfielders were going to stay high and the infielders were going to go low, just so they didn't hit heads. And then same thing with the center fielder and the corners. If the center fielder was going to stay high and the corners were going to go low, if they were going to hit.
And I think it's important that you do those drills too.
You have to.
Because they're going to happen in the games. And not only do we do them between the infielders and the outfielders, but we do them down in front of the dugout, with the third baseman. We work on the catcher getting over, seeing the angle of the ball coming down to let them know whether the ball is going to stay fair or going to be out of play. Work on, the first baseman, third baseman getting to a fence, getting their hand so they could feel the ball coming back one way instead of having to worry about where the fence is and where the ball is going to be. All those.
Are you having your catcher go out with them to track to let them know what the fence is?
Yeah, the catcher goes when the ball goes up. That catcher
unless there's a guy at third base.
Yeah, first base or third base, and they'll say plenty of run or out of play. Yeah, that's one of the responsibilities of our catcher, no question.
Yeah. You coach third still, or are you in the dugout?
I still coach third.
Love it.
Love it. Yeah, I don't know if we win or lose a game because we send the guy and he gets thrown out, or we don't send the guy, but maybe we could. I want that to be on me. At least that's the way I feel about it at this point. So, I've always
and you've been doing it for so long. You got feel for when guys should steal and when to put things on, just with the amount of experience that you have. I did both. I coached third. I really liked coaching third, but sometimes our team needed me to be in the dugout from a decision-making standpoint, and hopefully trying to get guys calmed down. I don't know if I always helped with that, but hopefully.
Well, I keep a lot of guys. A lot of interest. I think, and that's good because it creates interest. But again, with that age group, you get guys that aren't playing. You want to keep that focus in the dugout. You want them to be good teammates and be willing to do the things that they need to do to. With the reentry rule in high school, I think that helps out a lot too. You can use kids to play to their strength, and you can tell them that so that they understand what their role is. And
what's your guys' pitch limit rules in West Virginia?
Well, it's 30. If you throw less than 30, you can throw it again the next day. If you throw over 100, 110 is the most you can throw in a game. If you throw 110, then it's 3 days before you can come back. So,
have you stayed with that?
Yeah. And early in the year, we'll limit. Yep. In fact, there's even been talk, and I thought it was a pretty good idea, although it's never been formalized, that early in the year the pitch count might be less.
I agree. I completely agree with that. I think some of it's an education piece. I just don't think coaches realize that maybe guys aren't acclimated to throw that many pitches. Where I think you need to stair step the pitch count early, especially because you can't have them. Everybody's crammed for time with when you can get your players before the season starts, and so the on-ramp piece is not. You just can't do it with the amount of time that you guys have. You can't on-ramp guys enough, and hopefully your players are throwing on the side, but they're not always going to do that. I just think the stair step. Maybe you're going to start at 70 pitches, and then you can add 10 as the season goes. But I just think there's a lot of ways you can do it. But I think it's just a safeguard, a little bit more of a safeguard to stair step it.
The flex days have helped us with that, starting in January to get the guys going. A lot of people say, I've heard people say, how are you going to have enough pitching to play that many games? Well, if you play games you got to have pitchers, right? So you're going to develop pitchers. And then early in the year, if you let a kid throw 30, 40 pitches and use somebody else, you're developing guys. You're bringing them along. And
Preseason,
Greg,
my
you
head
don't
coach,
want
my head coach at Memorial High School, Quentin Merkel, was really advanced and won a lot of games, second all-time winningest coach in Indiana. But everybody pitched and caught in the preseason. So even though I never threw an inning off the mound in high school, we still worked on pitching. Everybody pitched and everybody caught in the beginning. I think it was more to get everybody's arms going, but just in case.
I heard a coach at a clinic one time say, in the high school game, pitching's 90% of the game. He said, that's the reason I spent 100% of my time with the pitchers, he said. Yeah. Indiana, have you ever heard of, did you ever have the opportunity to meet Ken Schreiber?
No, but I knew Ken and I know Doug. Ken is the all-time winningest coach, Laporte. You knew Laporte, even though, Laporte is way far north. Evansville is as far south as you can get in Indiana. So we would see them at the state tournament because, two best teams from the north and two best teams from the south would play for the state championship. So I knew Laporte because you just knew his name because you saw it everywhere. But another phenomenal coach.
Tell you a story about him. When we were driving John out to Minnesota one time, I saw Laporte on the sign. I said, I want to go in and see. And so we went to the high school. We saw his field. And then somebody said, well, he lives right over there. So he lived close to the field. So we went over and knocked on his door. And I introduced myself. And he took us back over to the field, gave us a personal tour, and he gave each of the boys a one of their game hats, which I thought
they had wild uniforms. That was the thing that stuck out about Laporte is they had wild uniforms. They had, it was an off red and then gold, and they wore the old school stirrups, and we did too at Memorial. We wore the old school stirrups, but they had wild unis at Laporte.
Yeah, he was a great guy, and I remember seeing him too at some of those, the clinics you'd go to. He'd always have guys gathered around him. He was an institution. So.
When you first got into it, what kind of resources were you leaning into? Because you're a young head coach. What kind of resources were you leaning into when you first got into it?
Well, the field I played on the first year was down at the corner of the football field, and it was a skinned-in field. And, that's where we played. It was an open field. We had a fence in right because the fence in right was a barrier between the sideline of the football field and the bleachers. But we didn't have anything in left. Unless we want to put a snow fence up, it was open. So you play ground rules out in left field. And I can remember my wife and I going out and taking my vehicle, my car, and pulling it up to the edge of the infield, shining the lights across. So we take Dixie cups out there and dip water off of it. So then our first year out of Jefferson, the school opened, football field was ready, those kind of things, but the baseball field wasn't ready yet. So we played out away in a little community called Leetown. They had a field. But the next year, the first year at Jefferson, our first year we got to play at Jefferson, it was a dirt infield. Didn't have any fences. I just had, for dead ball territory, it was wide open in the outfield.
What were your ground rules with no fence?
Well, plus all you could get in the outfield.
It was all you could get?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say I've only had one player hit for the cycle for us in school's history. That was the first game we ever played there because, won the gap, he got a triple. No, a little further, he got all the way around with it. We used to put lines down the chalk lines down the, for the barriers down the right and left field line. We first got our fence for the perimeter of the field when a friend of mine who was a landscaper said, John, I said, I just took down some chain link fence from this place. It's, it's not the best to shape, but if you want it, we can get it up. And so we put it up and we spray painted it, get the rust marks off of it. I had 10 people in town give us $100 each so we could put a backstop up. But we've advanced from that. From now, we've got a nice facility now, like I was telling you, with the indoor facility, but it's all been.
You guys turf or natural?
Natural.
You're natural now. I think
we,
that's
we
another thing that's changed a lot too. Is the material I feel like is much better now.
well, we have all the turfs and all that kind of
I
stuff.
just think that material has gotten so much better. The field maintenance material has gotten way better over the years.
There's a racetrack close by where we are. We used to get all the excess stuff they take off the racetrack,
Yep.
which was pretty good because it was sandy and it would drain good.
Yep.
And but we won the National High School Baseball Coaches Association Region Two Field of the Year about a couple of years back. So our facilities, it's come a long way, and we got lights in the mid '90s, and our Boosters Club members had to sign a note at the bank to get the lights, and the bank would give us the interest payment back as their donation. So we got that paid off. We had a matching grant. We got half of it paid for it, and we had to. But
hey, how far with no fence? How far were you going down with the foul lines?
Well, we go all the way out the build. The school was about, I'd say, 450 feet out.
Okay.
So yeah, we played on a field or Mercersburg. This is way back before John ever got there. And I had a kid hit on. They had a road out behind the left fielder, and it was wide open for them too. And I had a kid hit a ball, and it went out, and it looked to me like a foul ball for the other team. And I went out and argued. I said that ball, it curved. It looked to me like it went foul. He says, "Coach, that field goes on for infinity."
That's a great response. Oh, goodness. Do you have a fail forward moment? Do you have something you thought was going to set you back, but looking back now was one of the best things that happened to you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that'd be one of the best things that's ever happened to me as far as being a baseball coach. Is that what you're asking?
Or personal journey. I always like asking successful people that if there's something along the journey that maybe you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now, it actually happened probably the way it was supposed to, or even better.
That's an interesting question.
Everybody's got to answer that one. That's the one question that everybody has to answer on this because I love the responses that we get.
Well, I don't know. My wife's standing close by. Vicky, can you think of anything?
Well, yeah.
Life changing.
Hey, Vicky, jump on here. I need to ask you some questions.
As you said, she was the life changing experience.
Yeah, exactly. I think all of
Well,
our
you know what?
significant others would say that. So
let me expand on that a little bit.
Yep.
I went to the Naval Academy for a year. I went to Potomac State and I went to the Naval Academy, and then I had chemistry, calculus, and physics all in the same semester. So that was the end of me at the Naval Academy. But I came back and I was in a physical science class. And Vicky, my wife, she and I went to high school together, but she's a year behind me. And I really, I knew.
Did you guys date in high school?
No, we didn't. That's my point.
Probably why you guys are still together.
Well, I was in a physical science class up there at Potomac State after I left the Naval Academy, and she walks in, she sits down in the row in front of me. So from that point on, we started dating and so forth. So I guess you could say that if I hadn't left the Naval Academy, I'd have never met her. We'd have never gotten married, and things would have never evolved. The way they have. I mean,
Vic, I need to ask you because I lived this. How was it easy when the boys would come home, have a bad game? How was the dinner table when they would have a tough game?
Did you hear the question? Go ahead. She's walking. She's here now.
When they would have a tough game in high school, how was the dinner table after those games?
We replayed the game at least a dozen times. And figured out what we could have done different. And he wasn't too bad in the later years. In the early years, it was a little difficult, but in the later years, since he's mellowed out, he is not bad at all.
Yep.
So.
Did you throw BP? Did you throw to your boys much? I know John Sr. has gone a little bit here and there. Did you do much with the boys? She went out.
She went out. She in the cage.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we had a batting cage in the backyard and a pitching machine, and I used to feed the balls, especially to Rusty, the youngest one. And then one time, Charlie wouldn't catch with John, so I decided I'd go catch for him, and he hit me in the knee with the baseball.
Yep.
And that was the end of that.
Love it.
But when they were little, we used to have those big Albert bats, and we'd throw those, and they would, wail away. So
How were you able to keep it straight? Just with you got 3 boys, how were you able to keep everything straight with getting them to where they needed to get to?
well, at times it was difficult, and I had one year he decided to go to North Carolina.
Yeah, the Olympic Festival I was mentioning.
Yeah, so I was left with the 3 boys, and we recruited friends.
Yeah, it takes a village.
Yes,
Takes a village. Cool. All right. Well, Vicki, thanks for jumping on with me.
you're welcome.
Yep.
Talking about playing in the backyard. One of the first camps I ever worked at was the Nellie Fox camp. It was up in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. Yeah, and of course Nellie was alive at the time, and he was at the camp. But anyway, when they were playing the games, I took John and Charlie up. They were a little young, but they let them come up for the last day of the camp. And John is playing first base, and a kid hits a ball in the gap, and he rounds first, and John trails him down like you would, And I forget the guy's coach's name. He coached at Northern Iowa. Say that his name will come to me, but I can't.
Dave
remember.
Schrag.
Say it again.
Was it Dave Schrag?
No, it wasn't him. It was a guy who had married a girl from Chambersburg, which was close to where the camp was being held. And but anyway, the gist of the story was he stops the camp. He says, "I've never seen that." He said, "How old's that boy?" I said, "He's 6 years old." He says, 6 years old, the ball's hitting the gap, and he's trailing him down like that. He said, "That's amazing." I said, "Don't make it more than it is." I said, "When we play in the backyard, when the ball's hit out, we only got 2 fielders. One of them plays first, one of them plays the field. If the ball gets past the fielder, now he's got to become the second baseman." So he runs down the second. So that's what he was doing, But it looked like he was trailing the guy perfectly.
We talk about that a lot too. Just on the youth side, is I think soccer modifies their play. I think modifying that type of play will help younger kids learn the game because of things like that, where the byproduct of that is actually they're going to put themselves in positions if you modify it a little bit more for them. With not as many kids out there, smaller field, smaller ball, there's a lot of things that I think we can continue to help the game going forward. That just for that byproduct is they're going to actually learn how to play in space a little bit better.
I think that's one of the things that we are missing with today's youth is the pickup games.
Yes.
It might be you'd have it's 4 guys, 2 on the side,
or 2. Two, you're playing pitcher's hand, wiffle ball, playing pitcher's hand. There's a lot of things you can do with just 2.
Then you learn to solve your disputes.
Yes.
And you learn to just make decisions and do things. I heard a guy. I've always liked this story. They were I forget the guy's name. They were interviewing a pro guy on TV one time, and they said, "What's the best day you've ever had?" He said, "I went 68 for 72 one day." The guy said, 68 for 72? What do you mean? He says, "Well, when we were kids, we'd start at 8 in the morning, we'd play the dart. One time I got up 72 times and got 68 hits."
Yep.
So that doesn't happen anymore.
No, It does not. You got any evening or morning routines that you like? You're still doing it and doing it at a high level. Do you have anything that you do in the mornings or in the evenings that are pretty set for you each day?
Well, I like to keep myself in a semblance of physical condition. I had some barbell thing, not barbell.
So you're still doing strength training.
Kettlebell, and I like to walk. And the one main thing, and while we were talking here, he had his head up in my lap. And if he'd had the computer on, if I had a camera, you could have seen him. My dog and I like to go out all the time. He loves to ride.
Get a dog. That's like, if you want to stay active, get a dog. They'll keep you. You can't.
He's a golden retriever, and we got him when he was 2 months. He's 20 pounds now. He's 100 pounds, and he's just he keeps his. We got to be energetic to keep up with him. But
that's the best dog we ever had. She was a golden. Her name was Kerouac, but she was a golden Brittany Spaniel mix. Unbelievable dog. Great with our kids.
Yeah. Yeah, he adds a lot to our. We even had to get one of those doors, that he can go in and out because we would have to get up I'll let him out. He's in and out that door constantly. So
What does this mean going into the ABCA Hall of Fame?
I didn't understand that question.
What does this mean going into the ABCA Hall of Fame?
I didn't understand the last part of that, Brian. I'm sorry.
Going into the Hall of Fame this year, what's it mean?
Oh, well, I tell you, it's just I'm truly humbled by it and so appreciative of all the people that have been a part of it to help me to get to a point, or to help us get to a point that something like that, would happen. A lot of people over the years have contributed to our program. I don't look at it so much as an individual award as a group award. It reflects the program, it reflects our community, it reflects my wife Vicki, all the people that have supported us, and I'm just so humbled and appreciative that to be considered for one thing, but to be elected, it's just I'm really appreciative of that. And and from the baseball perspective side of it, I do think that my experience in the Valley League, especially early on, and I'm going to throw a couple names out of guys you might have heard of or mentioned. Joe Carbone, who's in the Hall of Fame.
Great human being.
Yeah. And the pitching coach at the time with Jack Stallings at Georgia Southern was Larry Bryant. And those two guys, they had patience with a young high school coach when, they probably could have gotten an assistant or something from someplace else, but they let a local high school guy come in and be part of what they were doing in Winchester. And it really helped me as far as coaching baseball is concerned. But
hey, John Jr. was in Omaha with us, and that's where they do a lot of the legwork for that. But he was ecstatic when he found out that you were going in.
Yeah, it's a culmination. I mean, I guess you say it, but it's just you're so excited, but the humility you feel and the appreciation. Those are that have all that have contributed to it. I mean, if one person doesn't just do. I mean, and I think you could probably look at all the other guys that throughout time that would. It's the same. It's the same thing. Like you were saying, there it takes a village to raise a kid, which is to do something like this. It just takes everybody to be around.
Can you get to 60? Can you get to 60 years?
60 years?
Coaching?
I've thought about that. Let's see, this is 53. That'd be 7 more. 7 on 84. I don't know.
Woody Hunt made it. Man, Woody Hunt got there.
Oh, is that right? Well,
yeah.
I started coaching in the 60s, although I didn't start coaching baseball in the 60s. So I was figuring up the other day. I think that's what
that still counts.
60, 70, 80, 90, the zeros. So that's 7 decades. So.
That's wild. Love it. Love it. Well,
I've always wanted to do it, and the good Lord's blessed me with the opportunity to do it, and I'm appreciative on that and that account too. And that you referred to it early, having a family that bought into it and enjoyed it and had the same interest. It just made it it's been a great life, no question.
Well, John, thanks for jumping on with me. Vicki, I appreciate you jumping on with me. I've been wanting to do some baseball wives and moms episodes, so maybe that'll get me motivated to start lining up some baseball wives and moms episodes. So appreciate you guys jumping on with me.
Okay, she's over there getting some of the Christmas goodies together and kind of listening to me gab here, but she certainly appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, John. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in Nashville.
Okay, thank you.